Well, hello, I'm Mike Harbour. I'd like to welcome you to Harbour Livestock. We're going to give you a tour of what we call our show barn. This barn was built 12 years ago. It primarily houses our show animals during the show season. During the spring and summer, after major shows, we keep our wean lambs in here, and that's the stage we're at right now as far as weaning and selling lambs and goats. Tell you a little bit about the show barn. We have 12 individual pens on this side. The interior pens are 12.5 by 8.5 feet. Each one has a roll-up door and a run that goes out, extends 30 feet out off on the overhang. As we look in the barn here, we'll move to the other side. This area here is where we pretty much house our show wethers throughout the season. We keep them on shavings. We'll talk about that later in the management section, but we have 5 individual pens on this side, and we can keep our sheep and goats on shavings as needed as we prep a lamb for the show, or we keep our wethers on shavings throughout the feeding season and just getting them ready for show. As we move down through the barn, okay, in this area, we'll notice we got 2 faucets here on the corner of the barn. We have a hot water heater wired in and plumbed into this barn. I think it's super critical in the winter months to have warm water that we provide for our show animals. We've got that plumbed here as well as in the wash rack. We've got a chalkboard that's super important. Any information that we need to know to remind ourselves of things we've got to do. Plus we'll put our feeding mixtures and our schedules up on the chalkboard. Good spot to have some halters handy and a rubber tube in case anything chokes and we need to assist things for that. But as we'll move into the feed room right here. All right, in our feed room, of course, we keep all our feeds and supplements in here. We try to mix things daily to keep everything fresh. We have a mixer here to mix large amounts of feed, whether it's creep feed or show feeds, put them in the bin as we mix them. But the full line of Purina feeds, lamb feed, goat feed, as well as supplements are used in this room. All right, we have our supply room here. You know, fungus is always a constant concern and issue when it comes showtime, and so we have a washer and dryer here to keep our blankets washed and clean at all times. Good storage for all our towels, our blankets, everything we need for our show supplies. And this is our clipping room. Of course, we keep all our blades and clippers in here, try to keep them out of the weather. We've got a good lit room, so we can bring animals from the wash rack, get them dried out there, bring them into our clipping room. We can spend plenty of time getting everything clipped and fitted up like we want them to, as well as, you know, in a room that we can heat or air condition as needed. All right, in our wash rack area, we spent a lot of time in this with today's trends on the goats. You know, just getting that leg hair right, getting the height and hair right on our goats. So we spent a lot of time conditioning, rinsing, blowing, using the roto brush, just getting those goats fitted up. And you know, this last year there was a goat in this wash rack, or multiple goats in this wash rack every day, just getting them ready. In today's trends with extra leg hair that we need and just the hide and the condition and the touch that it requires to win, lots of hours are spent right here in this area, just conditioning, rinsing, blowing, trying to get everything as good as we can. Okay, super important spot in the barn right here is our exercise area and practice area. Our lamb and goat treadmills, they get used every day once we start exercise, an intensive exercise program. So we'll have lambs and goats in here every day. Most time in the morning we'll treadmill. We'll go to our outdoor track in the evenings to track outside on the sprints with the exercise dog. We've got a practice area here with the large mirror, getting those lambs and goats set up, just making them look right. You know, that mirror is just a great tool that that cuts down on arguing, and an exhibitor can come over here, practice on their own. They know if those animals are set up properly or not, just by looking at themselves in the mirror. I think it helps tremendous on showmanship and getting one set up. But this area right here is super important in your total program as far as having a spot where we can exercise in any kind of weather. Our track's outside and uncovered, but so when it gets really wet, then we can double up on our treadmill going forwards in here, and this just, you know, eliminates any setbacks in terms of exercise. Well, that's a quick tour of our show barn. You know, when it comes to building a show barn, I suggest just getting out there, going and looking, and you know, before we built this one, for years I was thinking about what I wanted in one. I like the runs. I like the ability for us to close things up. We feed throughout the winter for our spring shows. So, you know, here in Texas, we've got to adjust for the weather that we have. So in the winter time, we can close it down. I don't have a heating system in here, but we have large infrared heaters or space heaters that we use to keep this barn relatively warm when we need it. Our high ceiling is you know, something I've thought a lot about, especially we probably deal with more heat here in the Southwest and in Texas than we do cold. So the higher ceiling allows that heat to rise, and we can move it out. We've got fans throughout the barn to where we can push air one direction and just move it through the barn. Some things to think about, especially here in the Southwest or in Texas. Try not to have your barn open to the west because that sun setting in the west in the afternoons and evenings can be super intense. I know our west wall, if you went and touched it, you know, in August at about 5 o'clock, you wouldn't touch it very long. So we've got this barn open into the southwest, mainly the south direction. Our prevailing wind is from the south, so we open all these doors, and in the summer we get a good breeze that rolls through this barn. We have two big roll-up doors on either end, and we can get air flowing through here along with the fans, and we can get everything moving and pushing in one direction. Insulation is always critical, especially on the roof, I think, to keep that heat from going. And one thing I wish I'd had done when we first built this barn is gone ahead and spent the money to spray foam insulate the roof and the west wall. And that's in our plans to do this next summer, because the insulation we used was pretty defective. But anyway, insulation, high ceilings in in hot areas. A lot of y'all up north, you know, your barns are lower because you're dealing more with cold weather than we are. Another thing, I think it's a tremendous, positive to go ahead and put a hot water heater in your barn, especially in the wash rack. I didn't mention that earlier. When we're conditioning those goats and lambs, I think it helps set your conditioner a lot better. The hide and hair just responds so much better to our conditioning and our washing if we got warm water. Plus, probably our biggest asset is watering these animals in the winter months. Goats, sheep don't like drinking cold water. They can have fresh, water in the automatics or in the water bucket, and if it's cold, they aren't going to drink it. And so you'd be surprised at how well they go to water during those cold months of the year. We water morning and evening in 2-gallon buckets with warm water, and I think that would, especially down here for us guys that our major shows are January, February, March, that'll help alleviate some of the urinary calculi problems that we see because goats aren't consuming enough water during cold spells and really harsh weather. All right, I'm going to offer you a few management tips of what we do here in our barn. Keeping in mind that hair management is becoming increasingly important, no matter where you show, what part of the country you show. Leg hair, just the look of the animal, that extra bit of chrome when you walk in the ring, that's super important. And so we've changed up what we've done in the past. This past year we moved all our show wethers on shavings. We got them off the dirt, we got them out of the bigger pens, moved them into a smaller area. Our management as far as our leg hair, our hide health, just the overall animal, went into a daily routine. I mean, we treat our show goats like you would if you had a really nice show heifer or cattle. We rinse, we blow. Trey spent lots of hours this past year on his wethers just trying to increase the fullness of that leg hair. Some of that comes with genetics. You know, there's goats that are born with more leg hair than others. Goats, you know, there's a certain time of year they start shedding that hair, they grow back, the baby hair's gone, the adult hair's coming in, so it's a constant struggle trying to keep and manage that hair. So we've moved our goats on to shavings. We've done more in terms of just mineral and vitamin supplements, your organic minerals, zinc and manganese. Keeping these guys, this happens to be a set of sale prospects we have right now. A couple of them we might show. Most of these are our sale animals, but we've gone to, once we wean, we're going to try to keep them on shavings, just keep that leg hair healthier, keep that body hair healthier, you know, wash, condition. Good conditioners matter immensely. Some of the most basic management ideas or management skills that you need to have: fresh, clean water daily. I think that's super critical to goats. Goats are very susceptible to urinary calculi because of the size of their urinary tract, where everything's configured. And if we don't offer fresh, clean water daily, those bladders shrink just like a water balloon with marbles in it. When you shrink that balloon, those marbles are going to want out. And so a lot of times with calculi issues, you see it happening during extreme cold weathers, during showtime, when we forget to water our animals. We're worried about drenches this and drench that, and we forget just the basics of fresh, clean water, which is your best drench, by the way. But keeping these guys hydrated is super, super critical. Without fresh, clean water, they won't eat. They don't eat, they don't perform. So we use the blue buckets. We do not use black water buckets. They don't drink well out of them. Hanging troughs. You know, once we get down to showtime, you know, right now you notice there's several goats in these pens. We'll have one goat per pen. Fewer numbers, the more time we can spend on individual animals, and we start early. These guys won't show till January, February, March, and we've got a couple he's already starting to work leg hair on, rinse, you know, get everything chain broke, get everything broke to show while they're little. But environment is critical. Keep the flies out, keep the dust out, fresh bedding constantly, fresh clean water. You know, we'll talk about feeding in another segment, but all that increases the overall health of your animal. They'll eat better, they'll do better, they grow better. Plus, you just feel better about going to the barn if you've got a clean environment, clean shavings, and you know, clean goats. But just work hard. Keep in mind that winning doesn't happen the week, month, you know, 30 days before. Winning starts when you get the animal. We've got to have a continuous program. You know, there's no quick fixes. If you don't put in the time, you don't have the effort, and you aren't paying attention, you dang sure won't see the success at the end of the road. Just remember, environment, lots of effort, and hopefully you achieve the success that you're looking for. Okay, when we talk about showmanship, as far as goat showmanship goes, the sooner you start, the better. So we've got a young prospect here, has never really been worked with, and he's about 75 days old. That's a great time to teach one to walk, brace, drive. A lot of people have difficulties because they wait too long. The problem with goats is they're so smart. They remember once they make up their mind. The old dog new trick aspect of this, the younger the better when we start teaching these guys to show. When we refer to bracing or pushing, I see a lot of people have difficulties on you know, they're like, how do I teach my goat to brace? Well, most of the time, a goat's not bracing because we either started too late or because the exhibitor doesn't know how to brace the goat. Bracing really should be called resisting, because the animal's only resisting the amount of pressure that you're applying. One of the common mistakes that exhibitors make is they stop, they bring the animal to them, and so that releases any pressure that we started with. You'll notice, go ahead and back off of him and get started. When we go and show an animal, when we go to him, I want Trey to step into this goat and apply the pressure. As you see, he moved in there with his left leg and he's applying pressure. The goat's given to it, then he started resisting right there. We didn't bring the goat forward, we made the goat go backwards. The pressure comes from the center part of the body. He's going to apply with the inner part of his knee and the inner part of his thigh here. We want to apply pressure through the center part of this goat. The exhibitor's got to feel the pressure and know when the goat's responding. He'll start pushing back. Once he responded right there and felt the pressure on his leg, that goat's resisting. If you want to call it pushing, he's pushing. But to me, he's actually resisting and resisting the amount of pressure that Trey's pushing on his leg. And so we'll see him right there. He gets a light brace into this goat. We're trying to train him at this stage. And so right there, he's holding him, making sure the goat relaxes. You may have noticed when he started, he lifted the goat up. We do this to mainly cue the goat, like, okay, now we're starting, it's expected for us to resist. And so once that goat, as he lifts him, you see right there, he went to the front of that goat, he started applying pressure, that goat's resisting. And as he does it, he'll slide that goat easy down his leg. We want those front feet to either be on the ground or hover just right above the ground. And they can hover there with not much effort in the upper part of the body. A really good showman shows primarily from the waist down. That goat's resisting and applying the pressure that he's providing, you know, through the chest, through the center part of the body of the animal. And with that resistance and those two forces meeting together, that helps lift that goat up off the ground. We don't want to pick them up and use lifting as a crutch for bracing. We want to use lifting as a cue to get that animal to respond to the amount of pressure that we're going to apply. Once he feels it, you know, in getting a goat, training a goat like that, we're going to work easy with him. Right there he backed up, so we're gonna move with the animal as he backs up, and then he's gonna just put his leg into him and apply pressure. You know, at this stage, being that this is the first time we've actually worked with this goat, this little bit right here is good. I think we've worked with them long enough. We aren't struggling, we aren't stressing things. Sometimes you gotta know when to quit. And if things are getting difficult, if you've started a goat and you've worked with them 5-10 minutes and it's really positive and everything's going good, that's a good time maybe to quit. You know, take him back to the pen, put him up, we'll try again tomorrow. But this guy's responding really well. If he wasn't, he was going backwards, Trey would be walking with him and we would just continue backwards until that goat starts resisting and you start feeling pressure. Once you do that, you apply the pressure with the inner part of your leg and then gradually slide him down and let his legs hover above the ground. Okay? Well, that's some good tips on learning how to brace one. All right, I want to talk just briefly about Trey's posture. We want the shoulders back. If you'll notice, he is showing this goat with his legs in front of him. I'm not a big fan of having goats right between your legs with their noses pointed up in the air. When you do that, they have no leverage. It's like pushing against the wall. If you're going to push against the wall, you aren't going to look at the ceiling. So I want to drop that nose, try to have that head flat, have the lamb driving or the goat driving into his leg, and we don't have him between our legs with his nose pointed up in the ceiling. Nothing positive comes of that other than breaking in our top line and not removing all their power and their strength. So that's the goat's posture. His posture, his shoulders are back. He leans back. He's driving with his thigh off the ball of his right foot, and his left leg's used as the pry bar to apply the pressure. All right, we move now into, let's teach one how to walk. What do we do to get one to walk? Well, the last thing you want to do is drag a goat. If he's looking at your backside, you're doing it way wrong, okay? Goats remember. Okay, as we're teaching this guy to walk, get him out in front of you just like that and let the animal go. When he goes, you go. The main thing to remember on walking is just be patient. You know, allow the animal to move. When he goes, you go. You can walk wherever you want to with him at first. Just try to do the steering, and the animal needs to get comfortable with having that chain on him and just being beside you and beside your leg. But these are a few good showmanship tips that we shared with you. Just keep them in mind, and good luck.